Alright, guys. I wanted to talk about a concept real quickly before I film it to tell you guys a little bit about the backstory as to why us trainers do it. Like I said, I try and be as transparent as I can and let you know always the why behind the what. So I think I've mentioned it before to everyone. It's something I utilize a lot. I'm not going to take credit for coming up with it. A bunch of trainers use it. It's a thing we know needs to be fulfilled in a dog's brain, but it's often severely overlooked. And that is foraging, and the aspect of foraging and the desire and the drive to do so. So, dogs are natural foragers, right? Scavengers, foragers, they need to find their own food or feel as if they found their own food, so, which is going to lead me to my next point. And that act of scavenging, hunting, foraging, it provides a type of mental stimulation that is not really addressed and fulfilled much in dogs these days because it's so routine with our feeding, right? It's usually just the same boring kibble at the same times a day and just hand it out like nothing. Maybe we make them work for it a little bit by sit and stay. People, it's a good impulse, but that's just working obedience. Still, at the end of the day, the food coming too easily can be a problem. What the act of foraging can provide for a dog reaches far past just exercise to get out a little bit of energy and hone a drive. It also can help prevent and even treat a lot of behavioral problems. People wouldn't often think those two things are linked, but they are pretty deeply. So there's a lot of ways we can fulfill the foraging aspect in our dogs. We can use things like the hide a treat stuff. We can work on a little bit more. So I put that down at base level. We can work on more complex things like nose work. But, those are a little bit, I'd say, one too easy, one too difficult for just the stage we're all at, that you guys are all at in training right now. The number one that I like to implement that any dog can do, once you build up their food drive, right, which I've already done here these last couple weeks, everybody's really motivated to eat. I've done that by, one, randomizing the feeding intervals by a slight variable, and also giving them 15 minutes, no more, to consume their food, and then pulling bowl and food. And even after those 15 minutes, if they finish, still pulling the bowls. Okay, if you see bowls in the kennels, that's either for a hide a treat exercise or for water. That's fine usage of those, but the one that they should eat out of should definitely be pulled at that 15-minute mark, even if it's bone dry, completely picked clean. That's going to help build their food drive, right? Because if you give that 15-minute window and they don't eat, the food leaves. They learn pretty quickly. I have to utilize this time that this person's providing me with to eat, and I have to take it seriously and show some drive, show some interest in my food. Otherwise, I'm just going to lose the food. So the food drive's already up now at the week 3 point. Everybody's a good eater. The bowl's down. They're eating. Once you take care of that, you can start moving to what I call scatter feeding. Trainers call it different things, but that's what I like to call it. And you can use it in several different ways. You can scatter feed pretty much anywhere, but I like to do it in areas that have a lot of other conflicting scents around to actually, have a little bit more going on up here in terms of, their mental processing. So where is that? Primarily outside. I like to scatter feed primarily outside. Inside is going to be a lot of the same recycled smells. It's not going to be that challenging for them to discern food from the smell of their toys, their bed, their people. That's all pretty easy. But if you scatter feed outdoors, you have a multitude of smells from the flora and fauna alike, and just anything that blows in on the breeze. Different people walking by, their scents are going to come through. I live right across from a school and another church over here. Plenty of people walk by my yard and around. That's noises, smells, environmental pressure, right? So it's not even just here. It's other parts of their brain. Other senses are being engaged when we scatter feed outside. But what the primary focus is still fulfilling that foraging aspect of a dog's lifestyle. We really need to make sure we can, in some way, still make them feel like they're earning their own food, right? And we can do that when they're just by themselves. We can do it. We can do it solo. I mean, I know Obi doesn't have another sibling dog, but I would say if we're doing it with no other dogs around, to try to increase the difficulty. So you change the areas you scatter feed each day. You can even change a little bit the amount. The distance with which you do scatter the food can change, right? All increasing what to them feels like work. And when you give a dog a job, you grant them with a sense of fulfillment, and a fulfilled dog is a happy dog, is a confident dog, right? So if it's just the one dog, that's my best suggestion, so that they don't get bored with the exercise, is scattering the different areas, different lengths of a field. I would say that they could have to search. Not like they're going to be going out and doing a whole acre, but just little by little. You can also take them out on like a long line, right? Like a 25, 30-foot long line out into a forest reserve or something, and you can scatter feed there. I wouldn't scatter feed on much shorter lines because that's going to drive the nose too far to the ground and make our walks a little bit pulley. But when we're doing long line work, which is prep work for off leash, we can scatter feed a little bit for that. So they really feel like they're earning that food. They don't know we bought it at the store. They don't know that some guy made it in a factory and processed it and burned it in a fire and turned it into this little piece of kibble. They don't know any of that. They think, man, I did it. I got this sense of pride and achievement, and it really does help treat a lot of their otherwise unaddressed behavioral problems. Those dogs that are really codependent, those dogs that are really either on another dog or on a person, the dogs that are struggling with confidence, the dogs that struggle with environmental pressures, like randomized noises and stuff, either alert barking to them or shutting down, things like that. If you teach them how to forage, they're going to enter into those situations, or those situations are going to occur to them as if in terms of like environmental pressure, which we can't control. And they're going to enter into those with a lot more of a steady foundation, because they've worked in these environments now, and they've worked around these noises. They haven't just existed around them. They've had a job, and they've had mental clarity and focus in those environments. So then the same thing happens, whereas a dog, let's say a big truck crashes into a tree, something random, big noise outside. Normally that would cause alert barking, or normally that would cause a dog to shut down, whichever your dog is struggling with. But if they've worked outside, and if they have that sense of, drive and confidence, that thing will happen. They'll notice it, they'll recognize it, and they'll go right back to, that doesn't concern me, that's not my problem, I work in this environment. So I really can't go on long enough in terms of the benefit of teaching your dog foraging techniques. But obviously we can change it up down the line. You can ask me for more suggestions anytime later past the camps if scatter feeding gets boring for them. But let's focus first on scatter feeding. It should just be their kibble. Once their drive is high enough, kibble should be enough to work for. And here, we're going to do it around other dogs. So we're going to be learning how to not resource guard at the same time we're learning foraging, but also creates healthy competition, because I want to get more kibble than you, right? That's the main goal. So hitting about the 10-minute mark here. I'm going to cut the preface for that, and we're going to go implement it and see what it looks like. It's very straightforward. We're just scattering their food, but we're doing it for their benefit and with a lot of hard science and trial and error behind it. You know, and we're getting them wins. It's definitely a win, especially when you got dogs around. But even if you don't, you just scatter it, like I said, out in the grass, on the deck, in the yard, just further distances. They're really going to feel a sense of pride and accomplishment from finding their own food.